We're back on the Florida Roundup here on WLRN. I'm Tom Hudson. Thanks again for listening. The Miami-Dade County Commission this week took important steps toward its $6 billion plus budget that begins in October. The commission voted to slightly raise the property tax rate used to pay for libraries, but other rates used to fund the police department and other agencies will remain flat. The votes now mean that almost 600 jobs, including more than 200 police department jobs, could be cut. Shorter hours at a few libraries could continue, and library staffing will remain smaller than it was 3 years ago if the proposed budget from County Mayor Carlos Jimenez goes forward. Ariane Campo-Flores covers the Southeast for the Wall Street Journal along with us. John Rivera is the president of the Dade County Police Benevolent Association, joining us here on the telephone, and John Quick is with Friends of Miami-Dade Public Libraries. John Rivera and John Quick are two of those folks that are representing certainly interests in this county budget. John Rivera, do you see libraries as a competition for public dollars?
No, actually, I think we're both trying to do the right thing for the community. Where the mayor should be doing it, we're doing it for him. So I don't see them as competitions. I think we're partners in trying to make a better community.
John Quick, would you describe police as partners in this budget process?
Absolutely. I agree that there should be no competition for dollars between the police and libraries. Well, they both have public safety aspects. We help keep the kids off the street, and you know, everybody knows what the police do, and we thank them for what they do.
Arguably, though, John Quick, your team was successful this week in getting a higher than proposed budget out of the county commissioners, potentially, whereas John Rivera, the police, and other agencies were not. What's the message?
I guess first I want to thank the 8 commissioners who did vote for the increase in the budget from what was being proposed by the mayor. We were a little disappointed. We didn't get the full amount that the experts had said was necessary.
You potentially could get $53 million under what was raised earlier this week. You were asking for $64 million. The mayor's budget was in the $40 million, mid-$40 million range.
Correct. Actually, originally the mayor was proposing a $30 million budget. Through I think in part, at least by our efforts, it got it up to 45 at the time of proposal to the county commission.
And now up as high as 53. Will that do it?
That will maintain the status quo as to what things are. It won't provide enhanced services. People in South Dade, there was a proposal for them to get the wildly successful and popular U-Media. That won't take place. The enhancements and upgrades to the children's areas and the collections, which includes computers, that's just not in the budget, unfortunately.
You going to settle for $53 million? Is it over? Is the negotiation finalized?
I think in terms, this is a millage cap that has been set.
So it could be as high. The official rate hasn't been set yet.
Yeah, in terms of this year, that is the cap as to where we are at. This is a long-term process. Sometimes I think somebody had said, Margaret Thatcher said at one point, sometimes you have to fight a battle more than once to win it.
John Rivera, meantime, for the police, using John Quick's analysis here, that the millage rate is set. Your millage rate that'll fund the police department is set, an 8% cut in payroll. The mayor continues to say it's a worst-case scenario based upon the snapback provisions and the concessions that your membership agreed to a few years ago that are set to snap back come October 1st.
Well, yeah, and people need to understand that a budget is a political philosophy, a political stance by a particular person. So it was very obvious that Mayor Jimenez did not put public safety as a priority. He left it for last. Since he's been in office, we've seen that over and over again, not just with us, but the fire boats, and there's many examples. But, it's some interesting months are ahead of us, and we'll see what's going on. Because I have a funny feeling that the mayor's trying to play a game, trying to outsmart the commissioners, and it might backfire on them a little bit. So I think there's some interesting stuff that we need to watch.
What's the game here at play, do you think, John Rivera? How's the mayor trying to outsmart the commissioners?
Well, remember, the mayor was highly upset when the commissioners did not back him on the 5%, which was a promise, one of many promises that the mayor had made to labor.
This was an additional 5% the mayor wanted labor to contribute to health care.
That's correct, and they didn't side with him, and he was highly upset about that. And so I think he's kind of like trying to say, okay, well, I'm not going to raise taxes now. I'm going to put the monkey on your back, commissioners, and I think he thinks that he can outsmart the 13 of them. And I don't know, I think some interesting times are ahead of us. I got a funny feeling.
Well, I think we're living in those interesting times right now, John Rivera. Certainly the budget from Mayor Jimenez calls for an 8% cut in payroll. He calls it worst-case scenario, but he contends that even with the police department staff reductions, the number of cops on the street will remain the same. You agree?
No, that's misinformation that he's putting out. I mean, look, if you cut 228 officers, I don't care where you pull them. He calls it administrative or behind the desk.
Investigators, not street cops.
Yeah, I know, but there's no such thing as administrative stuff behind the desk. What we have is investigators who on occasion have to go to their computers and sit behind the desk to do part of their investigation, and then they're back on the streets. At the end of the day, if you take cops away, we're going to have less cops. Something's going to suffer in this. We're already suffering. We're already taking 2 or 3 hours to respond to a call. I mean, we're becoming a county where if you call 911 at the same time that you call a pizzeria, there's a good likelihood the pizza's going to arrive before the cops.
John, you've used that line to certainly some effect here. You've also talked about citizens ought to buy an attack dog or buy a gun if the mayor's budget goes through come October 1st. And the mayor has called those comments irresponsible, that they feed to the perception of public insecurity. How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, I got to tell you, I've been confronted by many people, and they're the ones that gave me the idea. He is trying to intimidate the community, trying to intimidate employees, trying to intimidate the commissioners. This is sort of a Tea Partyist mentality. He does not put public safety as a priority. That's case in point. There's no argument about that, and he doesn't really care whether people suffer because he's not going to suffer at the end of the day.
Well, he would argue that you're still going to have the same number of patrol officers, that he's trying to get budget lines, budget outcomes, budget spending in line with revenues, and trying to put to some degree this back to the unions to agree to continue those concessions that were agreed to back in 2011.
Well, if you look back in history, you see that our officers, our investigators in public corruption, made a connection between fraudulent absentee ballots and his campaign office. From that day forward, he did away with the public corruption unit, and little by little, he's been punishing the police department because he didn't feel that his own police department should have been investigating them. And so if you look at the history, it's been nothing but a deterioration under his leadership. And he can't put that on the unions. He's got to eat that one.
John Rivera with the Dade County Police Benevolent Association. Are you in active negotiations right now with the mayor?
Actually not. He brought in a lawyer that there was a conflict of interest. So technically, we haven't even officially sat the first time. And the ball's in their court, and we're just hanging around waiting. He's been telling the commissioners and the community there's a desperation to sit down at a table. We haven't even gotten a phone call from him.
And the ball's in their court because you contend that the negotiator is inappropriate. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And their contention is there is no conflict of interest with the negotiator, even though this negotiator in question has experience with your organization. He was on the other side of the table several cycles ago.
I don't think that they've refuted that yet. I think on scene, the lawyer himself said, "Come on, John. I mean, but I don't think we've got an official response from the county at all."
Meantime, the concessions that your folks agreed to include paying 3% of the cost of a single health care plan. Holidays were considered regular work days, so there was less holiday time, reduced minimum overtime guarantees for called back to work, the elimination of some OT work, suspended uniform maintenance allowance, suspended non-sworn law enforcement support penalty, no extra night shift extra pay. That was reduced. Employees taking home county cars have to pay $50 each pay period toward maintenance. Would you agree to any of those to continue come October 1st?
Well, let me tell you, for the last 3 years, my members have agreed to help out the community, and they have given up 25% of their salary with the agreement that he was going to have these snapbacks come back. This is part of an agreement that he made with us, part of a contract. No different than the contracts that he has with his lobbyist friends or with contractors that do construction work for the county. He honors those contracts, whether it be the Heat, the Miami Dolphin, or whatever. Why are we different? He needs to honor ours just as well as he does all of those other people I named.
John, John Rivera, do you support higher taxes in order to pay for those snapbacks?
Well, let me tell you something. I think that a community has to pay for the type of services that it wants. Miami touts itself as being, one of the greatest metropolitan areas in the United States of America, and wants to pay for public safety on the cheap. So, if that's an answer for you, that's higher taxes. I mean, it's got to be commensurate with what you want to provide the community.
To pay for public safety on the cheap. John Quick with Friends of Miami-Dade Public Libraries, you got a slightly higher tax rate. It sounds like you'd support more because you wanted more dollars.
Well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to come from a tax rate, because in terms of the countywide.
Could it come from operational efficiencies and other places in the library budget?
Well, it could come from a number of places, but one of which the library district is a separate district and does not actually encompass the entire county.
That's
so
right.
If there's a bump in the library district, it does not necessarily mean that people would see a bump in their property taxes, or that there would even be a countywide bump. So, I kind of, turning to kind of what John had said, I always look at the two sides of the coin. Don't offer services you can't afford, but at a minimum, pay for the services you believe in. And our county says they believe in libraries, among others, as well as police.
John Quick is with the Friends of the Miami-Dade Public Libraries. John Rivera with the Miami-Dade County Police Benevolent Association. John Rivera with the police. If you come to October 1st with still no contract, your organization is barred from going on strike. But what happens October 1st with no contract, no agreement?
Well, we're going to have to see if the mayor's going to come through with his threats.
And what about from the union?
From the union, we're standing by. We're waiting to see. We want him to honor his contract just like he does everybody else. That's our bottom line.
John, of the 200-some-odd positions that could be on the chopping block in the police department if the mayor's worst-case budget goes through, how many of those are empty right now? In other words, how many of those are unfulfilled?
Well, if you ask the county mayor's office, he's going to tell you, one, we have records that show anywhere between 110 to 175.
Are empty positions right now?
Yes, sir.
Are
yes,
empty
sir.
positions right
We're
now?
actually 328 short. We're going to lose 240 in the next 18 months because of mandatory retirement. And if he lays off another 400 or 200, whatever, because the numbers keep changing, he's going to wind up losing about 40% of his police force, which at one time was considered the premier police force in America.
Yeah. Finally, John Quick, how would you assess the support that you got from the administration, especially from the outgoing library administration, in regards to the dollars that you've been asking for?
I'd say that it's a difficult position for a director of any county department to be out there advocating. But I will say that when the library was funded at the proper levels, it was a world-class library. Unfortunately, since fiscal year 2009-2010, we've seen a disproportionate decrease in the budget, almost a 26% decrease, whereas countywide it's only been about 3.5%. In terms of the services that are offered with the funding that they have, I think they've done a wonderful job.
John Quick with the Friends of the Miami-Dade Public Libraries. John Rivera with the Miami-Dade Police Benevolent Association here on the Florida Roundup. Thank you both for your comments. The program